We're waiting for you.
How you doing? My other students, yeah.
We're giving it a few minutes, but I think I'm going to get started because we have a class in here at 5, so I want to make sure we have plenty of time. So, Mariela, are we going to start pretty soon? That's beautiful. Your butterfly. Thank you. Okay. We have a go ahead to start. Bueno. Gracias por llegar aquí. This is Las Maestras Center for Chicana Indigenous Thought, Art, and Social Practice. It's been a while. We've been here since 2017. We came through COVID, and then it's taken a while for us to get back up in terms of our programming. We lost our associate director, who was very meaningful in the work that we did here. So I'm Celia Herrera Rodriguez, and walking in the room is the co-director, Cherie Moraga. She's in the audience, folks. So I just want to welcome you again. I'm very happy to begin our programming, to have our artists in residence, which Dalila, Paula, Méndez. And so I'm very excited that we have access to her. I hope you students, we have a workshop on Saturday at the Santa Barbara Museum of Contemporary Art. And she's working on a mural actually with the graduate students in Chicano studies, Chicano and Chicanx studies. So we're very blessed to have that work going on. She'll be here one more time in March. And during that time, if you would like to, those of you who haven't had a chance to really see her work and spend time with her, let us know, and we can organize a little gathering, something that's not, something informal that you can have some time to talk and look at the work, especially those of you interested in arts and culture. So I'm going to introduce a little bit, if I can find my little. So Dalila is an indigenous Guatemala Salvadoreñan queer artist based in Los Angeles. She was raised in an Armenian, Arab, Guatemalan, Salvadorian household. What a lot of conversations must have happened there. She credits Barnesdale Art Park classes for igniting her love of both photography and painting. And as you'll see, she creates vibrant works that combine contemporary images with sacred references to indigenous iconography, knowledge, and folklore. Combining the new with the ancient, she explores ancestry as a way to reinterpret and navigate issues confronting our modern world. Through painting, printmaking, photography, and film, her art visually narrates stories of the resilience of cultures, elders, LGBTQ women, and the environment. Among the things that she has happened in the work that she's done in the past year, the film Mosquita and Mari, which she production designed, is included in the Academy Arts Museum. She's been awarded an art residency by the Department of Cultural Affairs. Her painting, LA Reimagined, was displayed at the Music Center for their public art project around the Plaza remodeling. She was one of 5 artists selected to create a print in Havana, Cuba, as part of the U.S.-Cuba Printmakers Exchange. Finally, she received her Bachelor of Arts in International Relations from the University of California. And I'd like to welcome Dalila to this Chumash land. And I wanted to remember to give thanks and be ever grateful for the energy and the generosity of spirit that remains on this land, and to also think of, remember, and know, right, the life forces that continue here, the Chumash peoples that continue to make culture, that continue to bring a resiliency and a resistance that we then engage with and that influences our work as well. So I wanted to say thank you. And with that, I want to introduce Dalila.
Hello, everybody. Thank you for the introduction, Celia, and thank you to this land that we're standing on, to the caretakers of this land. And I also wanted to acknowledge all your ancestors, all of our ancestors who have gone through so much for us to be able to be here in this present day. And so I just like to call us into taking some mindfulness breaths, just so we can be present in our body, leave maybe some of the tension, stress, or whatever has been going on today or in life in general, because things are very challenging at times. And so we can take a couple, 3 inhales and exhales together. If you're sitting on a chair, maybe you want to come have your feet on the ground. You know, you can sit, you can stand. Maybe if your shoulders are tense, you want to bring them down and just become present to your body. Maybe you're holding tension in your neck, maybe in your shoulders, your legs, wherever that may be. And maybe when you're inhaling, bring that air into those areas. And when you exhale, then try to release the tension or the stiffness, whatever may be happening inside your body, and honoring the air, because without air, with all the elements, we don't have life. So we'll take a good inhale. And exhale. You can exhale out of your breath. Another inhale. Another exhale. And one more inhale. And another exhale. Thank you for being present to this moment.
Yes. Speaking of breath, I just want to
Like the fire.
see.
Thank you.
Okay.
So I just wanted to take you on a journey. As was said earlier, we can go to the next slide. Said earlier, I am a queer, indigenous, Salvadoran, Guatemalan artist. I was born and raised in Los Angeles. I was raised by a single mother and raised very close to my grandmother and my aunt. And then my mom married my stepfather, who is Palestinian and Armenian. So it was very interesting for me to be this little girl who very much had these matriarchs who were pretty independent, very strong, and the stepfather who was very patriarchal. He was born in Jerusalem, immigrated to the United States, probably like 17 years old. So he was very traditional. My family moved from El Salvador to Guatemala to New Orleans, and then my grandma was widowed very quickly after they moved to New Orleans. Probably a month after they moved there. And so my mom was also raised by a single mother. And then my grandmother is the only one who came to Los Angeles. And my family on my grandfather's side stayed in New Orleans. So my grandma made that journey and then later sent for her kids. And this was in the late 60s. And it's interesting because when they came a year later, they came up by themselves on the Greyhound bus, you know, and we still have these migration stories of children traveling by themselves, these migration stories of people moving to find better lives, you know, to have different opportunities because of poverty. And that's why my family moved to the United States. And as a child, my mom went to Cal State LA. And then I would stay in the library by myself. And it was during these times that I would like go to the library, look at books, and start drawing. And so that's really where this love for drawing and doing art came from. And my mom, luckily, was able to see that in me and put me into these Barnsdale art classes. And so I credit this like this park that had art classes for children. And I took photography and painting simultaneously. So they both really informed each other. And I used a Canon small 35mm camera that I still use to this day. And I'm very grateful that my uncle let me use his camera, and I still have it to this day. And it's one of the things that I still take pictures on. And so being from an immigrant family, being an artist wasn't an option. It was like, you have to go be a lawyer, you know, the typical idea of immigrant parents of like having a 9-to-5 job. So I majored in international relations from USC. And then once I graduated, I became a teacher because there were those certain teachers that made a difference in my life. And I wanted to work in community. So I worked in Cypress Park and different communities of color, and bilingual education at that time when it was still available, in the late 90s. And then also watching my students and what they were eating, noticing also, you know, my grandmother very much came from the Campos of El Salvador, and they had a farm. They used to work the land. And so she very much was tied to the land. Like plants were very much an important part of her life. Even in her little apartment, it was like a jungle on one side of the walls. And so I always grew up with plants. And then also being kind of a latchkey kid of the 80s, I grew up in Echo Park. And so I was playing in the hills of Echo Park. Trees were my babysitters. And I had a really strong relationship with nature and landscape. And so those were things that were really important, and seeing my students and how they wouldn't focus, and seeing how food really affected their learning. And then me becoming vegetarian in high school, I decided that I wanted to also study and become a master gardener and then work with communities of color in LA and different areas of Pasadena. We can go to the next slide. And so I put these the three bottom ones are collectives or organizations, or more collectives and collaboratives that happened in LA in the late 90s. And then Self-Help Graphics as this place that really was a place during the late 90s for myself that was having events, a lot of multimedia events that really brought community together around zapatismo, around different fundraisers or things that were happening within community in East LA. At that time, it was on Gage and Brooklyn, now Gage and Cesar Chavez. And it was that these places, that I saw artists that looked like me, and it made such a huge difference. And at that time, they were doing a lot of different arts, like printmaking was the focus of self-help, but they also would have different exhibitions. And so I was able to, for the first time, exhibit through a show with Mujeres de Maíz in the late 90s, 98, and was participating with that collective, an artivist collective that still to this day is around. And they're actually doing, they have a book coming out at this moment too. Also women image makers, we met in self-help at an event, queer Chicana artists and community organizers who we came together to help each other, because as artists, you know that getting access to resources is really difficult and it's really expensive. And so we found that it was easier for us to work together, but also to support each other. As I say, I was a baby queer at that time. I also was coming out at that time. So it really made a difference for me to be around artists, queer artists, Chicana queer artists. And so I did a lot of my filmmaking and production design with this collective. And then Epicentro was another collective that came together as Central Americans. We found each other within this Chicano, Chicanx space and decided to come together to do performance art. I did at that time as well write poetry, and so I was doing performance, and that's kind of where I came out as an artist as well, as like doing performance art. And it was really a really great collective to be a part of. And most of those, like women image makers and Epicentro, kind of disbanded, but Mujeres de Maíz still continues. And Self-Help Graphics now is located in Boyle Heights. And this year they're celebrating their 50th anniversary. And I come later in, probably like, I'll show you, but in the late mid-20s to start printmaking. We can go to the next slide. So in my early 20s, I would go back to my motherlands, to Guatemala and El Salvador. But in the 20s, I started to travel by myself. I go to Mexico to work on a film there with my mentor, and then start traveling through mostly like Oaxaca, Chiapas. And at this juncture, the Civil War was kind of ending, was ending at this time in Guatemala, and they were having this a strike, the death squad, people who participated, who were paid, who were supposed to be paid by the government, were having a strike and were blocking a crucero that's in the northern part of Guatemala. And they wouldn't let anybody go through. They even had people like in the airport, they had people stuck in Tikal in areas. And so a friend of mine, we were both trying to get down to Guatemala City and we weren't able to. So we had to reroute like ourselves and come through Guatemala through this river called Rio Usumacinta. And this place, for me, a lot of landscape has life. So like, I think growing up in Echo Park, the land speaks. I feel like the earth speaks to us. We get whispers through the trees, through the plants, through the land. And my grandma always would say that plants are like children, and we have to treat them like children. You have to give them the care. We have to take care of them. And even if we feel like they don't have usage for us, they work and they are helping all of us living on this earth. And so this place really spoke stories to me. And in the background, you can see there's a high tree, and that's the ceiba tree, which is the sacred tree in the Mayan cosmovision. It's where like earth connects to the cosmos or to the heavens. And so I'm in this place where the water speaking, the fire of my communities are speaking to me. And so it really is a way that I use photography to document these places and then have those kind of influence the paintings that I work on or in my printmaking. We can go to the next slide. This is in Chichicastenango. There's a mountain that you walk up to watch a ceremony to Pascual Abaj. And it was the first time that I was able to experience a Mayan ceremony. And I was allowed to take a picture to honor the fire in this community as this wise, like all these elders were participating and community was invited to bear witness. And so it was very much like a remembering, like a reconnecting with my ancestors, and being able to participate and sit in this space really were these very important moments in my life in my young 20s, and coming out and trying to stay true to my heart and reconnect with my ancestral teachings. So I can go to the next slide. This is a photo I took in Chichicastenango, just honoring, I mean, it's just a beautiful composition that I really love seeing this matriarch with her children, the tejidos, the stories that are woven into the fabrics, and each area of Guatemala, each tejido looks different and tells different stories. And so with my camera, I was just like able to document things that were really having really profound effects on my spirit. And this disc, sometimes like because I was born in the US, you know, it's that like Gloria Ansaldúa, ni de aquí ni de allá. And also because of imperialism and colonization, these indigenous wisdoms and art were lost. And so for me, as a young 20-year-old, I was like reconnecting with the artesanía and this beautiful art forms that are done within all of like Latin America, and seeing how beautiful the vibrant colors were and the stories that were being told with these symbols. And you know, especially in Guatemala, the Mayan cosmovision. Unfortunately, with El Salvador, there was a genocide in the 1930s that wiped out a lot of indigenous people. A lot of indigenous people were killed, and a lot of things were burned with Spanish colonization, as we all know. That these teachings or these ways that our communities would create artwork, some were lost, and some, these stories, these like alternative narratives are told that like, oh, there are no indigenous people in El Salvador, but that's not true. And there's also the language that had to go underground, especially in El Salvador, had to go underground for people to continue to survive. And so through my painting and photography, I tried to honor the spirits of my ancestors, honor the resiliency of the women who have come before me, and to really, I guess, uplift myself and the communities that have brought me to this point that I'm at. And so through art is the way that I've been able to tell these visual narratives. We can go to the next slide. And so this is a painting I did of a señora. And was used on the flyer, but just really, I love fabrics, the colors of the tejidos, the playfulness of the señora, and just kind of honoring the matriarchs. So we can go to the next slide. So these are all dealing with matriarchs and family, and that, so again, the photo that I took, I then created a painting of that photo, and go to the next slide. And this piece I did honoring, kind of talking about food justice, but also learning about the Black Panther Party and realizing that they had started the first free breakfast program for children, and that history wasn't taught. And at the same time that this was happening in the 60s, 70s, it was during Trayvon Martin being killed that Black Lives Matter was also happening, and how this movement in the past connected to the present, and honoring the women and those generations that have come before us to fight for our liberation, to fight for our communities, to have access to quality food. And so I just really wanted to highlight and pay homage to these women and these programs that really make a difference in our communities, and honor that we still need food justice, and it's something that still to this day is affecting our communities. You can go to the next slide. This piece is titled Diosas Enamoradas. This is the first iteration of it. So it's where I wanted to queer the story of love and queer the gods and goddesses, and use this, like, make a modern CODIS. And I put Kukulkan with Lady Havash there in this love story. And the lotus represents coming from like the darkness into the light. And below that is this phases of the moon, the connection that the moon has to us as women, and also as into the earth with the ocean, and all these different connections that the moon has with these different natural elements. But making a modern codex of this time that I could speak to queer love as a spiritual act, as a connection to my ancestors, and knowing that, like, in these times there was queer love happening. So creating this like a modern story of queer love. We go to the next slide. This is the second iteration of that, and really inspired by the colors of the Bonampak murals, that those fresco paintings within the sacred pyramid, or these sacred palaces and sacred buildings, where the colors of turquoise and red terracotta, and so it's just like playing with this palette from the other one, where it was just more this like reddish earth mixed with the black lines, but bringing in turquoise and different colors into this new iteration of Diosas Enamoradas. We can go to the next slide. This is another piece I did honoring Ixchel, the Mayan moon goddess, and the ocean. And on the side are the symbols to Venus. And this was painted on like a lava rock to give it texture. And so this piece was really, again, just honoring the moon goddess and the Mayan pantheon, the Mayan cosmovision, and then honoring the ocean. And that I feel, for me, I have a really deep connection with the ocean, and wanting to put that there's a relationship between the moon and the ocean, and making this another modern codex. We'll go to the next slide. So this is a Tulum, inspired by the location. Again, you see another reference to Ixchel, the Caribbean Ocean, and this sacred temple of Chak, to the god of rain. And so for me, again, like the landscapes have stories to tell. And this area of Tulum was a pilgrimage site for Mayan peoples coming from south of Tulum to the Isla de las Mujeres, which is, they found a lot of ceramics and other altars that were done to Ixchel, the Mayan moon goddess. And so I just wanted to honor this very beautiful site of pyramids that are on the cliffs of the ocean. It was like a dream come true to see the ocean and these pyramids next to each other. And it was actually, Tulum also is one of the first lighthouses when you're out in the ocean looking towards Tulum and to the pyramid there. Once you see two squares, you can see light through them. Then it signaled that that was a safe place to navigate your boats onto land, because there wasn't any coral reef that could destroy the boats. And so it's just the beauty and, I mean, what people were able to do just with their hands and not all this technology that we have, and how much these places were very important for my ancestors. If we can go to the next slide. This is a piece called LA Reimagined, and again, landscape. So I wanted to reimagine LA where we had access to green spaces, but paying homage to the style from El Salvador, from the artesanos, and taking, flora and fauna that we can find in LA and paying homage to the LA River, that a lot of people at that time didn't really see that it was this huge waterway, but it has so much life and is such a place. It's an important place for a lot of birds and animals that have lived in like the first caretakers of this land used to go to. It was such an important waterway. So just reimagining a new space, a new place with LA, and then the city, the industrialization of the city in the background. And then on the Goodyear blimp, because at the Dodger Stadium, there's always a Goodyear blimp, so I put peace and love as a kind of for LA. So we go to the next slide. And this is a piece in remembrance of Feliciano Ama. I learned about this history not until I was like in my 20s, and about this genocide that happened in El Salvador. And so I wanted to pay homage to, I guess, all of our ancestors who have fought to live, right? We've had to fight for land, we've had to fight for access to resources, and go against these politicians and governments who just want to be so violent with the lands that we need for our own existence. And so most of the pictures that you'll see, Feliciano Ama is being hung. And so I wanted to have him standing and honoring the people and the fight that he did to help, the indigenous, the Pipiles of El Salvador, to fight for access to our land and resources and for them not to steal the land. And then on the top is a quote by Monsignor Oscar Romero, who also was a priest, a liberation theologist who was sermonizing in a church, and during the Civil War he was shot while he was giving his sermon. And so it's a quote to him that says, "Peace is not the product of terror or fear. Peace is not the silence of cemeteries. Peace is not the silent result of violent repression. Peace is the generous, tranquil contribution of all to the good of all." So I wanted to just honor these two Salvadoreños who really fought for the people and serve as our luchadores, our warrior spirits that we have. Go to the next slide. This is a piece honoring the torogos, is the national bird of El Salvador. And those are flowers and plants that you find that are natural to El Salvador. So it's just, again, just paying homage to like the plants and animals that we have on our lands, and that I think we need to take care of, and also that I feel like birds are messengers, and so it's honoring our ancestors and these messengers of the spirit world. You can go to the next slide. So This is a print, actually, a serigraph, a silkscreen print. It's one of the first prints that I did at Self-Help. It's actually one of the first prints I ever did ever. And I was invited to participate in this atelier called Weaving Stories. And because of, the loss of my family's history and not being able to learn tejido or embroidery, or not being interested in embroidery at that time, I wanted to create a huipil through a serigraph, through a print. And so this print is honoring our spiritual awakening, our coming to consciousness. And then surrounded, so then there's the evil eye that you find in Arabic culture. It's like to get away, mal ojo. And it's flanking all these things that I feel are causing violence within our society and in our communities, like deforestation, offshore drilling, the melting of our glaciers, gun violence, Nike symbol for child labor, GMOs and like food being created in laboratories, processed foods, war, use of drones and killing folks in different countries, and then our connection to this new device at that time, like Wi-Fi and all these things that are affecting our communities. And then the jaguar represents the warrior spirit. And so the warrior is saying love in Arabic and peace in Farsi. And then at the bottom is these things that connect us to communities, that help our environments, like riding a bike, slowing down and reading a book, and then how we as people can metamorphosize. And I guess too, as queer people, I feel like we come into our full glory and fabulousness through, like, represented through the butterfly. And then music being something that beyond cultures and like language, that we can come together in community and create music. And then the lower band is honoring the Quetzal, who's just giving the bendición, like the how do you say it in English? The blessing. And then honoring the four directions with the fish and the the circle, like, we're all connected. One leads into the other. There's no beginning and end. And then also the hummingbird to plants and the pollinators that we need to like grow food, and the warrior spirits that the hummingbird represents. And this was done, these are 6 colors, and the way that silkscreen works is that each burnt screen is 1 color, and you produce it off of usually like a ruby lith or a film. And so I drew by hand all those little lines to make it look like a string or like something that was woven. And so each kind of screen took me about 14 hours to create. And then I used my primary colors to then create the secondary colors. And then I was allowed, usually they only, at this time, they were only letting you use 5 colors, but the print master allowed me to use 1 more color, which I was grateful for. And so that's how this piece came about. And, again, because I'm a self-taught artist, I kind of like nerd out and teach myself things. And so that's how I created this piece and taught myself how to, with the help of the master printer a bit, but was able to create this print. And so the next one, slide. This is the second print I did at Self-Help. And this was just really honoring my queer self, playing with pop art. We all grew up eating Cheerios, but I wanted to say, like, hey, if we're queer, we can eat Queerios. And that if we're queer, the fabulousness is guaranteed, definitely. And then just really honoring ourselves, loving ourselves so that we can just fully express ourselves. And then again, making reference to non-GMO corn, which is very much, GMO corn is very much a part of our world now, unfortunately, and is causing a lot of like health issues, but wanting to like honor the corn. The next slide. This is a print I did for the Printmakers Exchange with Cuba. And this is a woodblock print. This piece, I thought I was going to be able to do silkscreen print, but there's no silkscreen print area in the taller gráfica that we were in. So I had to teach myself woodblock, like wood carving to create this print within a month to make it happen in Havana. And I wanted to pay homage to Mother Earth, but also the female body as like the map of our stories that we carry within our bodies. And so there's reference to Central America. So there's Central America, Mexico, South America at the bottom, Cuba, and the Caribbean. Also paying homage to the Taino and the African ancestry that is a part of our communities in Latin America and the Caribbean. And then the volcano of the fire of our spirits and souls that allow us to like continue, even though we've gone through so much, we're still here, resilient and fighting for the protection of Mother Earth, the protections and fighting against the violence against women's bodies, of sexual violence, domestic violence, and these stories that are told in ways that we used to send snail mail. So it's a homage to the stamp and how ways that we used to communicate in the slower pace back in the day. And then the Tainos were very much about the agricultural society. And in my research, I learned that the original shovel was created by the Tainos, and it was a branch that then at the bottom of this large branch that was enough could withstand digging into the earth, they would carve a snake's head because they felt that when you dug into the earth, you were awakening the earth and connecting it to the cosmos to then plant seeds to grow the food that fed communities. And so, and also the snake, it sheds its skin. And so again, it ways that we can shed the old things that no longer serve us to create a new. And then again, the Quetzal birds giving their blessing. So that was Corazón de la Tierra. We can go to the next slide. This is Corazón del Agua. This is a silkscreen print that I did at Self Help Graphics. And this one is 16 colors, which is really crazy. It took a while to do, but wanted to really celebrate queer love and also coming to love my own body and myself as a survivor of sexual violence and honoring the water that gives us life as humans and to this earth, and the sacredness of queer love and how we can come to our own understandings of ourself and just celebrating the divine feminine. And so this piece I did in 2018. You can go to the next slide. This is Corazón del Aire. And this is representing air, the volcanoes, fire, and the Quetzal bird. Quetzal is pretty much in a lot of my pieces, but honoring the air, the element of air. And this one was done on gouache on mulberry paper. You can go to the next slide. And this is Corazón del Fuego. And this is to the fire. And this one is represents my mother. My mother passed away in 2021 from lung cancer. And so she was the heartbeat, like she was the fire of our family. And so I wanted to pay just in this way that she was the fire that we carried on within ourselves. It's also the fires and the volcanoes that you find in El Salvador and Guatemala. And then the warrior spirits represented by the hummingbirds flying to the sun. And then honoring, the cowrie shell is this feminine shell. I mean, it's a shell that's used in a lot of ceremony, and then connected again to the water, and how the teachings that my mother and my grandmother have shown me and have taught me that I continue to embody those. And so I did this piece kind of honoring my mother for Corazón del Fuego. You can do a next slide. This is a huipil I did. At this time, it was the separations of families. And again, of something that, you know, crossing the border, our migrations, these policies that cause such violence towards our community, the death of folks and separation of our families from the different generations. And this, I wanted to just celebrate our communities, and even amongst something that's so horrible, there's so much to celebrate within our communities of trying to make a difference in our lives and for our families, and celebrating the children, even in the darkest of times. You know, what are the gratitudes and blessings that we have, and to celebrate the families and the mothers and the parents who make these journeys with their children, and so much that they go through. And so in the middle are the birds from all the different Central American countries. This one I would like to do in a silkscreen print. And right now it's just, its first iteration is as a painting. And the next slide. And so from that from that painting, I created this print. This is a silkscreen print, and it was made for a portfolio called Perro Mundo. And so they're just like excerpts that I took out from the other piece into this piece. And then again, it's in Arabic, it says resiliency and remembering. Go to the next slide. This is another Weepil I've done. I did this one in color pencil, and this was really about celebrating communities and envisioning communities to how we can like generate and be in a place where communities are thriving. And so, you know, I imagine places that have like homes, having access to affordable housing, gardens within these communities, all kinds of bodies being accepted and honoring differently abled, the children, the ancestors, also the connection between our elders and the children, and how elders teach this knowledge to those younger generations. Honoring like our street vendors, access to good, healthy foods, and different ways that we can help our environment through like bike riding or like public transportation, and honoring also the pollinators that allow for us to have food, because without our pollinators, we wouldn't have food. And so it's just a way to like, in this way that we can all live together and coexist and celebrate the beauty and the diversity within our communities. Go to the next slide. This is a tejido. It's more like an abstraction of the tejidos and the weavings. And this is kind of something new I'm working on now. I can go to the next slide. And so in 2018, I helped or facilitated a mural with queer youth based in Boyle Heights. With the LGBT Center has a satellite office in Boyle Heights to work with Chicanx, Latinx communities. And so the youth came together to create this mural honoring those who have made the migration and who have passed, honoring the communities in Boyle Heights and the history of activism within Boyle Heights area, honoring trans lives coming out of the maguey, and then the stories from our past, present, and future, and what we can build and create anew as we continue this story, we continue weaving our stories in our communities and uplifting each other. And we did this over 3 months. And so it's 13 feet by 10 feet. We can go to the next slide. Oh, this is another mural that I worked with a group of youth based out of East Hollywood. And this one is in a garden park. And so they wanted to tell the stories. The way this project works with this organization is they go and they collect stories from the community, and then we pull out different ideas that they want to use in part of the design, and then the youth design the mural and then paint the mural. And so they use food as a way that, like, we migrate with our seeds, we migrate with different foods, and we bring those into the communities that we live in, and representing the diversity of the cultural diversity through food. And then the backdrop is the Griffith Park Observatory that you can see from this park. And we can go to the next slide. And this is a mural I did with youth in Boyle Heights, and they wanted to honor, because a lot of times they were saying that we honor those that have passed, but they really wanted to honor folks that are living and present within the community. So they wanted to highlight Mariachi Arcoiris, which is a queer mariachi group based out of LA. And then we did the different LGBTQ communities through butterflies and looking at migration. And this was a really fun project. This one is 16 by 10 feet. And so I worked with students, about probably like 12 students, high school students, to create this mural. We can go to the next slide. And then I did this digital art piece actually for the LA Football Club. It's a soccer team in LA, but it was for Pride. And so I took the butterflies from that mural to celebrate the different LGBTQ communities, and just, you know, celebrating our queer pride and our queer love. And that's where it ends for the slide presentation. But you know, I think I'm grateful that in a way that I'm self-taught, because it's allowed me to kind of play with all these different mediums. It also has allowed me to, like, if I can't do it, I can teach myself how to do it. I very much come from that DIY, but it's like our community. It's like we didn't know how to do it. We just figure out a way. And my grandma was that person. She was very resourceful. She would make things, do things. And, you know, there's nothing that we can't do. And so it's been a journey. It hasn't been an easy one, especially with my stepfather, who's like still to this point doesn't get what I do and doesn't really know what I do. And it's kind of hard because my mom, at the beginning, when I came out, she wasn't the most supportive of my queerness. Then she became one of my biggest allies. And to lose my grandmother, and then 3 years later to lose my mother, it's hard, because now, and it's something I had to learn too, is that it's not the outside that lets you know that you're okay to do what you want to do. We have to do it for ourselves. And also how we have to put, or myself, I'll speak for myself, is how I put into practice really connecting with my spirit, with spirits and my ancestors, in a way that I wasn't forced to as much to do when I still had my grandmother and my mother. And so how do we continue those connections every day and give gratitude to our lives? Also with issues that are happening in Palestine, like, our lives aren't guaranteed, and we still have to struggle and fight for our rights to live and do what we want. And so there are these institutions that want to tell us we can and can't do. But I think we've been going through and surviving for thousands of years, 500 years plus. And so we have to fight, and we have to, like, believe in ourselves and go after what we want, and don't take no for an answer, and try to figure out a way. So you know, it's been an interesting journey. I'm really grateful to have been able to do my artwork and use it as a way to tell my stories, or tell stories of my different communities that I'm a part of. And you know, and chosen family and these chosen communities are really important for our own survival. So I think I'll just leave it there. And I'm really grateful to Celia, Cherie, and those who have come before me, or, like, you know, I feel like I'm still learning, and the work you all have done has really influenced me, and is also what I take and I carry in my heart. And I'm just super grateful to all of you as well, because the work you're doing and who you're being in this world is important, because we all are affecting each other. And so with that, I say thank you very much for listening to me and for seeing my work and for being here today.
Stay right here.
Okay.
Well, first of all, because I get nervous and then I forget everything. And I forgot to say thank you to the California Arts Council to acknowledge their grant that allowed us to have Dalila here, the Luis Leal Chair in Chicano Studies, the Chicano Studies Institute, and all of you then who are supporting the artist as well. So I want to open it up to questions and comments from folks. Gracias. Back this way. Get my-
Turn the lights up. Is that okay?
Thank you, Dalila, for sharing your work. It's beautiful and very moving and very inspiring. I wanted to ask you, you talked about teaching, self-teaching or autodidact, right? Autodidacta and DIY and kind of you alluded to the rasguache aesthetic of our communities. But I wanted to ask you, and you refer to your grandma as a source of inspiration to do that. But sometimes it's really hard to overcome that fear of, oh, I'm not trained. I didn't go to art school. Sometimes people would do, oh, I'm a photographer, but I'm not an expert in photography. And they've been doing photography for the last 20 years, right?
Mhm.
So I loved how you gathered from, your communal learnings and how you were able to plasmarlos on paper, on wood, on all these elements that you talk about. Right?
Mhm.
How did you, or what was your, I guess, maybe it's a redundant question because you shared with us, but I think sometimes we doubt ourselves, how have you walked that path of asserting yourself in the world and saying, I have something to share and this is what it is and this is how I do it and this is how I manifest the beauty that I wish. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
How did you overcome that? And I think as university students, our students are constantly in that process, and so I wanted to ask you that. I mean, maybe it's an existential question, I don't know, but it's really important that you're here, that you're sharing this with us, that maybe sharing your proceso, right?
Yeah, I mean, I still doubt myself, there's still moments where I'm like, oh my gosh, but I think I've learned to walk through the fear, and at times that fear can be very debilitating where it stops us. I have had to find the courage and just to move through it. And I feel like I really look to my ancestors a lot. I say a lot of prayers of help me. I don't know how to do this. How do I figure this out? And I guess it's always me questioning myself and asking for help or just looking we're resourceful. I think we know how to do it if we just kind of sit and maybe ask the questions to ourselves. And the library, I have to say, I love the library. I grew up in the library. I am so happy in the library. And now, you have YouTube and all these different things that give us access. So it's if I don't know how to do it, then I try to figure it out in ways. And I think why I say that my grandma, my mom, single women, they had to fight for their survival. They had to figure a way to feed me, to feed themselves, to feed their children. And so I think that really is inspiring for me. And I think too, when I went to Cuba, it's where actually I embarked on being a full-time artist, because before that I would work a lot and then make time to do my artwork. But I'm the Cubanos, you talk about not having access to a lot of things, but I think when we don't have access to things, it allows for our creativity and our imagination to kind of flourish, because the work that they were creating was incredible. And then I'm over here like, oh, I don't have access to this and I can't do this because of this. And I'm like, how privileged am I to be saying that in the first place when people really don't have access to things, like with carving tools, like, they gave us a budget and I got these really nice Japanese carving tools to cut through cherry wood is what I was working with. And they were working with metal, bending it and making makeshift carving tools. And I'm just like, wow, like what you can do cuando tienes ganas, tienes ganas. When you really want to do something, you make a way and find a way. And I think that's one of the teachings of our ancestors is that even though we've gone through colonization, imperialism, we have survived. And what did our ancestors go through to allow for us, thank you so much, allow us to be here today? They have gone through so much. And yes, things are difficult for us, but probably didn't go, we all go through different things at different moments in time. But I feel like those are things that really help me to move me out of this, like maybe it's sometimes inertia or sometimes me like saying, oh, I can't do this and that. But yeah, like there are people before us who didn't have access to things. And so, but I think we can use things we have access to. Libraries are free, and maybe there's no access to these books anymore, but people are making underground libraries to give access to banned books. Like, there are ways that our communities continue to thrive. And I think for us that as groups of communities of color, we've had to figure out ways to do that. And I think it's good to call those spirits in to help you guide you through that. So that's what I would say.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Dalila. I know that, you've been a teacher for so many years, and I was wondering if you could talk about how your teaching it informs your work and how your work informs your teaching. And also I want to say, speaking of libraries, like on the way over here, I was walking to the library and your piece is in the hallway on the first floor of the library for you all who don't know, in honor of the self-help graphics exhibition. So you can see Dalila's work if you walk through the first floor of the library. And just in honor of library. But if you could you could talk about how teaching informs your work and vice versa as a process, kind of echoing what Professor Opal said.
Yeah, I think having access, well, I guess so in parts of Echo Park, it's gentrified now, but back in the day, our school didn't really have access to a lot of things. Like I didn't read a book like literature until 6th grade when I went to Catholic school. And so there were a couple teachers that really made a huge difference in my life who gave me that little push, or to be like, I see you and I understand you're acting up, but I see you and know that you have these gifts and you need to step up a bit, and so that really made a difference in my life. And my mom was an educator, and for her to move out of poverty, she became an educator. And so she was tracked, she went to Belmont High School, didn't have access to classes either. But watching her being a single mom, my mom used to bike from Echo Park to Cal State LA, which was probably I don't know, maybe 12, 15 miles to get to school with me in the back, and so it was education. Even my grandma would say that it's like education is what is going to help you and give you access to a lot of things. And so for me, it's like, it made such a difference in my life that for me, it was really important. And when I became a teacher, was to inspire my students, show them different things that they weren't getting in the curriculum that we had to teach them. But I would guess also I was very fortunate that the school that I was working at was coming from a social justice lens. And so, and it's actually why I came out, because the principal was part of UCLA's Educational Center X. And she was very much about celebrating our diversity. And we would have LGBTQ month. And I would talk to my students through literature that we use. Like it was maybe a story on 2 blue parents, not really so they were the children's literature that we would use. And since I was talking about this to my students, I'm like, I'm not even telling my parents, and my family don't even know. And so I think it was those things that really made a difference. Also, I had really bad experiences in education. When I was in 2nd grade, my teacher stood me up on a chair in front of the whole class and stuffed a paper in my mouth. And then I'm crying, and then she made fun of me on top of like crying in front of all my peers, and then was bullied as a result from my peers. And so I knew what it was like to be humiliated and ridiculed, but then I also knew what it was like to be supported. And so for me, I guess just education, like how we teach the younger generations and how important education is, and being able to give back to my community in that way, or to the communities. And then also learning and being able to do now like a public practice of like teaching murals and art making, because again, like the images of artists, we don't see as many queer women of color or like Latinx, Chicanx folks. And so artists, you know, at that time, Frida Kahlo was the person that I really looked to like keep me going and knowing that I could do art and tell personal stories through art. And then as well as self-help graphics. When I was in high school, they came and gave a presentation to a Chicano retreat that I was a part of. And so those things made a difference. And so it was always like, oh, education and sharing knowledge was really important, and what a huge difference it made in my life. And so I tried to do that still to this day, and just mentorship and collaborating with people that you are friends with in community that give you the nudge and tell you like, keep going, like we need that, you know, and how we teach each other. And also like, I also don't know a lot. I feel like I'm still learning. And I think being my mom, like always being a lifelong learner, being critical. And so we never stop learning. There's always something to learn new. And so that was really important to me, I think.
I think what you also say like about like not like being self-taught. I think, and you said it early on that, and many of our students, I think, feel as though that you're not you don't go to college to be an artist, right? You're not like a first generation college student at UCSB, for example, right? To be a teatrista or a muralista, or right, there's a way in which art is not always valued in the same way. And so I think that's something that we're always trying to work with, you know, the maestras in the room, like to think about, you know, how art operates as central to survival, but also like how it is the reason why many people stay in school or continue to be lifelong learners, like you said. So yeah, just want to also mark what you said early on, that like like you didn't go to school for art, right? Because if that's not what you're supposed to do as a first generation.
Yeah, most definitely. But art is such a part of our tierras and our cultures, like what we made with pottery. And but that's the thing, I think institutions are telling us like, this is high art and this is not art. Like, you know, we're constantly in ourselves, we're socialized at young ages. We're like, oh, I'm not an artist, or, oh, you made that. I mean, look at Picasso, like his stuff was just like, looks like kid stuff, but yet we're told we can't do those kinds of things, you know? So I think it's us kind of unlearning. I mean, education is great, but it does socialize us to limit our ideas. And so we have to like learn those tools, but then yet break the tools, like, right? You can't use the master's tools. And so like, how do we break through those limiting beliefs and allow ourselves to have more expansive beliefs about us as artists? Like the clothes we wear. I mean, there's all kinds of things we're always doing with art. You know, and Mother Nature, Mother Earth is like the best artist out there, like the sunsets, like those colors and the plants and flowers, like that's for me, that's like the supreme artist right there, like what is just happening. And so art is around us, and we are artists, like with our lives and what we're doing. So, yeah.
Can you talk about your photography? Like, how did you get into?
Yeah. So photography was Barnesdale art classes. And it's funny because I haven't really shown much of my photography. And I have tons of slides and tons of negatives that I this year I'm making myself sit down and really like digitize my artwork and show more. I think I'm gonna make I want to make a book, because there's a lot of photography that a lot of people haven't seen. I used to vend and make greeting cards out of my photography. But it, that's kind of the way that I would show my work, and people would just like go to these different events and buy my greeting cards, but I haven't shown much of my photography. And so I'm kind of like, I think that's when I need to come out with is more of my photographs. And I have like a large archive that, yeah, I'm just trying to figure out how to archive it all and to show it. But yeah, a lot of it is used in my printmaking or my painting. And so it's something I think I really need to this year want to focus on and sharing more of.
Thank you, Dalila. I think I'm gonna stop for a moment because I know that people might have classes to go to, so I don't want them to interrupt you. We have some food, a little bit of something to drink, and we want to stay a little bit. We have a class at 5, so at 4:30, we're gonna have to stop. But if anybody needs to go. We're good.
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Don't forget to send me those of you from my class or send me an email that you were here.
Do you want to ask a question?
Yeah, it resonated me a lot when you were talking about how the camera thing could like connects you spiritually, because I also like film cameras, and I feel like with film there's limited shots that you can do, so you really have to be present in the moment. And I really like how you said like the earth speaks to you, the land speaks to you, but how do you know like what type of film you wanted to do, like between color or black and white, because those two types of films do capture different things, and that's where like I want to see which one do you see more like pursuing, like black and white or like color or mix.
Yeah, I mean, both do tell different stories using the color palette. I was that person who walked around with 2 cameras. So I would have a camera with color and I had a camera with just black and white film, and they both were film. I used to take a lot of color slides because the saturation of the colors are just really incredible. But yeah, I walk around with both. But lately, I became, when digital like cameras became available, I stopped walking around with my camera. I started using more of my iPhone. Now I have a digital camera, but it's just kind of clunky. So I have to get back into this thing of like carrying my cameras and being that person with I just like a bag lady, like Erica Badu is like, okay, there's all these bags I have, but yeah, I would walk with both. And so those would be like, I'd get a black and white and get a color. Yeah, and they tell different stories depending on your limited palette. So yeah. Yeah, thank you.
I have a question.
Mhm.
So in your Maestra Celia's presentation, she mentioned that you're here working with a group of graduate students, right, from Chicano studies.
Mhm.
And throughout your career, you have worked with students either in high school or with a community building murals.
Mhm.
So I was wondering if you can tell us a little bit more about the work that you're doing here for UCSB with the Chicano Studies Department, and where the group is at in the creation of this mural.
Yeah, so they're actually here. We're not here right now. Yeah, I mean, I think in facilitating murals or like doing this kind of practice, it really is giving the tools to the students or the youth that are working on the art pieces. And so they're at the point where they're like painting the mural, and they're doing it over in the barn. It's right in the red barn. And they're doing a really great job. Like it's beautiful to see the designs and the ideas, like process. I think process is something we don't talk a lot about. We see like the end product. And so it's beautiful as like to witness them coming up with the design and design that works or what they liked or didn't like. And so watching them play with those images that they're working on and what they want to say. And so they're painting it, and we will see tomorrow, because we're supposed to go and see and look at it tomorrow. So that's one group that's working on the mural. They're working on 2 murals, very lofty goals. We're gonna do 2 murals, but they got this. I totally believe in their work and what they're creating. And then 3 other students that are doing independent study. But I need to connect more with the independent study students. But yeah, it's been the first time that I was here last month, just watching them work and seeing, and things that you come in working in such, I guess it's a short amount of time, and pushing themselves, and how sometimes like you think a mistake, you're like, oh, I messed up, but then what that opens for what you're doing, and that breathes something different for you to work with and to like see that other iteration. But yeah, it's been really nice to see them. That's a part I really enjoy, is seeing the process, because I think that's where a lot of the magic happens, is in the process. Because the end goal is great, but like, what did it take you to get to that place? And I think we grow as well in our personal selves, like how that process affects us, and what we see we can do, and what we can push through. So yeah, I'm excited to see, connect with them tomorrow and see how it's going.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, yeah, we've been putting a lot of work into this mural. We've done a lot of research. We were at the archives for like for like a couple hours, like the first 2 weeks. But it's not, mural is not something you can put, I mean, you can put it on a CV, but it's not valued as much as like a publication when you're in graduate school. Right, and like I said, like it was hard to get this project on its feet, and yeah, it's very like limited time, but I think I'm wondering, like, as someone who graduated from this department as an undergrad and is now a PhD student, why do you think it's important to have art in like a PhD curriculum? Why do you think it's essential to have, like, because I would like for this to become a class, for the next generation of PhD students who want to engage with art. So yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I think just as important as the written word is, the visual narrative is important, right? We don't really get to capture something through words. We can imagine it in our minds, but then when artists can visualize it and then create a visual image telling a story of, the founding of a department, I think it really hits differently. I think also within academia, it's this like theory to practice. It's like we can theorize about everything, but where is the practice? And I think art is the practice. And I think you also can embody the work differently, because you're in the creation of creating this image, giving life to stuff that you've been researching or going through archives, and you're bringing it all together in this one image or several images, depending on how you're creating your artwork. But art is life. If someone didn't design our clothes, like we would be like, it's just, there's someone always doing something, but we don't see, and we're not valuing what art is. And it's so necessary, I think, for communities to see the visual narrative, and to be, I think it embodies spirit, like as you're telling these stories, like your soul's going into these pieces that we create. And so I think it's really important for that practice to like bridge the theory to practice in creating artwork to tell stories that I think have a very hit differently than just the written word that you're reading in a book.
On your last piece, you talked about the use of digital
Art.
Yeah, oh, yeah. Can you share, because you went from like de lo más básico ahora lo digital, like how was that, and how do you see this? Is that the future of like, was it difficult to engage with it, like coming from a different type of practice, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had because I was doing this piece for this organization, or this like, soccer team in LA. I only had a week to do it. And so digital allows you to do it a lot faster. So it's just a different, it's just a different medium. I'm not a fan of being on the computer. I don't really like it. I'll do it because sometimes you need to do stuff on, Illustrate or create things for that, but it's the least thing I do. I do it usually like if a organization or someone's asking me to do a piece, and usually they're really quick turnaround, so it's just faster, because a painting takes me much longer. There's different, it just has a different, I feel like it's not as tactile, but they did create it into a bandana, so that was cool. But yeah, so it's just different, and again, I had to teach myself like Photoshop and Illustrator. I'm not that great at it. I'm very slow, so I have to get better and faster, but
My
yeah.
child is into drawing and painting but not, she's asking me for an app.
Oh,
And
okay.
I'm like, I don't know, I have to research, I have to consult, I don't know that I want you to go straight, because maybe there are other things you can develop,
Yeah.
So that's why I was asking.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people are working in digital now.
Yeah.
It's kind of what's happening. But it's like, I still think the older technologies are good. Yeah.
Well, you know what they say about writing, right? That's the best way, that's how we learn, from hand to eye. So when you wanna memorize something, it's not just about the typing, but also using your hand to write.
Yeah, no, it's very
There's
true.
something important about that at least we haven't lost it yet as human beings, who knows?
This is true.
We might get more thumbs.
Thumbs.
More agile thumbs.
Yeah, I think it's giving people carpal tunnel, but like,
Definitely.
the things. But yeah, even silkscreen printing has gone to like, a lot of people are doing digital film production. I'm old school. I like drawing it out. There's just something different of seeing a line that's not perfect, because this really makes it look very different. So, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Thank
I'm going
you.
to stop because we have to, I would invite you to come and hang out a little bit while we reset up the tables for the class. Is it here at 5? And we can take this. Thank you, those of you who are in my class, the papers over here. As well as your, yeah, everybody. If you want to give me an idea who was here, and if you want to leave us your number, that way we can put you on.
Oh, no, that's really cool. I was like, I was walking down.
No worries.
We have to do a report on that.
Oh. Yeah.
Yeah.
I forgot to mention, I have some postcards and some stickers if anybody's interested.
If anybody would like to take some of the cookies, you can take some.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
Okay.
Mhm. Yeah.
Still living in less Spain, but
Wow, okay.
it's like a lot of. No, like I, yeah, so excited.
Okay.
But my email.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's a film. And then, yeah, I like doing it that way.
It's just like.